Good evening, guys. Welcome back to Ansarkari. So, we'll be taking up the important news articles from the perspective of civil services examination. So, let's start with our discussion for today. So, the first article is talking about that the collegium's final decisions, they alone need to be in public domain. This is what is said by the Supreme Court. And collegium, it's composed of Chief Justice of India and the next four senior most judges in the Supreme Court. So this is a small development, and we see that Cyclone Mandis is also it is making landfall at Mamallapuram near the coast of Chennai. Mamallapuram is Mahabalipuram. Then we should be knowing about firstly, we should know that what are the climatic conditions, what are the weather conditions that lead to the formation of a cyclone, and we should be knowing about NDRF and SDRF also. So this becomes important for prelims. Moving ahead. Okay, three Himalayan medicinal plants, they enter the IUCN Red List. So, what are those three medicinal plants and what are their properties and characteristics and what is their IUCN status? So, we'll be looking into detail about all these aspects. So, the first one is this is the Mesotropis pellita. It has been assessed and given the status of critically endangered in the IUCN Red List. Then it is also commonly known as patwa, and it's a perennial shrub which with restricted distribution only in the state of Uttarakhand. So this becomes endemic to Uttarakhand state. So endemic means that it is only found in that particular state and nowhere else. So moving ahead. Basically, okay, so it's one of the important characteristics includes the essential oil extracted from its leaves. It possesses strong antioxidants and it can be promising natural substitute for the synthetic antioxidants. And the second plant is it is known as Himalayan fritillary, and it is a perennial bulbous herb. So in China, its species is used for the treatment of bronchial disorders related to lung and also pneumonia. And it is also considered to be a strong cough suppressant. So this is the second medicinal plant. The third one is known as Salampanja, and it's extensively used in Ayurveda, Siddh, Unni, and other alternative systems of medicine to cure dysentery, gastritis, chronic fever, cough, and stomach aches. So this becomes important for PT. Then looking at certain science and technology developments. So Vikram Sarabhai Space Center gets new trisonic wind tunnel. So here we should be knowing about the technology of trisonic wind tunnel. And so a test which is known as the blowdown test, it has been conducted successfully. So it under this test, the stored gases they are released and blown through the tunnel's test section, simulating the flight conditions. So that is what is the blowdown test. And the massive structure, that is the trisonic wind tunnel, it can perform tests in 3 speed regimes, and it equips ISRO with a robust in-house support system for space missions. So it's a big step towards self-reliance. And the wind tunnels, they are devices which are used to study the effects of airflows on solid objects. And the wind tunnel at the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, it is about 160 meters long and it measures 5.4 meters at its widest part. So that is about this wind tunnel. Talking about scramjet engine, so we'll be talking about what is its working process and what is this technology all about. So this scramjet engine, they are used in rockets and they are more advanced version of the ramjet engine, so they can operate efficiently at hypersonic speed. So this becomes important for PT. You should be knowing that it operates at hypersonic speeds and it allows supersonic combustion by breathing oxygen from the atmosphere during flight. and it then allows the oxygen to mix with hydrogen, which is already stored in the vehicle, to trigger combustion and produce the desired thrust to lift the satellite to its designated orbit. So that is the working mechanism behind the scramjet engine. And if the engine in the launch vehicle, it can breathe oxygen from the atmosphere, that will reduce nearly 70% of the propellant's cost. So basically, this technology helps in saving the fuel cost. So that is about it, and let's move ahead. So taking up the editorial section, this article is talking about that there is a need to expand the food safety net without any more delay, and we'll be looking into the nitty-gritties of this aspect, this topic. So as we know that the National Food Security Act 2013, through this act, the PDS system, that is the public distribution system, it provides a crucial safety net for roughly around 800 million people. And we saw that during the humanitarian crisis, which resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown, it made it apparent that too many were still excluded from this PDS scheme. Basically, it is saying that more and more number of people, they we can say they the potential beneficiaries, they have not been updated and included under this safety net provided by this PDS scheme. So that is what is the article is arguing and it is talking about. So we need to increase the population coverage, which is obviously going to be based on the population projections, because the 2021 census has been postponed and it has been delayed. So we'll be relying on the data of population projections when it comes to increasing the population coverage under the PDS scheme, under this NFSA Act. So looking at the provision, so PDS coverage, it is determined by Section 3, Clause 2 of the NFSA Act 2013, and it states that the entitlements of eligible households, they shall extend up to 75% of rural population and up to 50% of the urban population. So that is the, we can say, the percentage of the coverage of population in rural and urban areas under this act. And even the Supreme Court, it supported that we need to, include more people under this scheme. And but we see that government has sidelined this. So court has already taken this into account, that there is obviously the census has not been conducted, and it has suggested a solution to use the population projection for the same. And also on the basis of the Niti Aayog's view also, we see that the government response states that one of the prime concerns while fixing the ceiling at the time of enactment of the NFSA Act was that as standard of living of the people would improve over a period of time, the coverage may be reduced. So obviously, that was, we can say, the mindset behind this, setting this ceiling limit of, we can say, 50% and 75%. And it was believed that over a period of time, the number of people who will be requiring the benefits out of this scheme would reduce over a period of time. But obviously, that has not happened as it was planned and thought out. So we see that also another aspect was that now when the scheme was being implemented or when it was being discussed in the parliament, now many political parties, they argued and they supported that we should go for universal coverage and not this certain amount of it. So that was one perspective, we can say. And the government affidavit, it also relies on the faulty logic that as the per capita income will increase, the vulnerable population would have gone down considerably. Obviously, this is not how things work, because even if the per capita income would increase, it is not going to show that it is increasing for everyone. So we cannot say that if per capita income is going to increase, so the vulnerable population would go down. So that is the, we can say, faulty logic behind this, which was presented by the government. And there have been several independent reports which have pointed towards the increasing economic inequality in India. So instead of, things improving, they have worsened also because of COVID-19 pandemic and rising inflation. So what the center is doing, that it always shifts the blame to the state governments. But when we look at the responsibility of states, their responsibility is only limited to the fact that they just have to identify the PDS ration card beneficiaries once they are provided with the numbers to be covered by the central government. So we can say the ceiling or the amount of people that would be covered by this scheme is set by the center. So state has no role in changing that. States, they just have to identify the beneficiaries and that's it. So you can't shift this burden to states. And looking at several states, even several states, they have taken the initiative, they have used their own resources when it comes to expanding the coverage beyond what is said by the center. So there are several states who have taken this initiative, which includes the state of Chhattisgarh and Odisha. So they are in a way trying to do what the Supreme Court has said to the center government. And talking about what is going to be the we can say the extra amount of expenditure that government would have to incur if we can say more amount of population is covered by this scheme. So according to data, we see that when we increase or when we adjust the population increase, which is also being directed by the Supreme Court, it will roughly include, or it would roughly increase the coverage by around 10%, which means that uh, the number is going to go up from 800 million to 900 million people. And when we talk about the doubling of the ration that has been done by the government because of the pandemic, we see that earlier the government was providing 500 kg per person per month, sorry, 5 kg per person per month, and it was increased to 10 kg. So that this has led to doubling the central food subsidy. So even if there is 10% increase in the coverage under this PDS scheme, it is not going to be so much as we compare it with the doubling of the central food subsidy bill. So it is going to be lesser than this. And moving ahead, so it introduces bills to modify the scheduled tribes list. So you should be knowing that this power to include or modify this list, it rests with the parliament, and state government does not have this power. So in this article, we'll be taking important facts such as which are the scheduled tribes which are being talked of including in this ST list, and they belong to which state. So this is important for PT, it's highly important. And it is basically, the bill is seeking to add the Nari Korvan and Kuruvikran hill tribes, which belong to the state of Tamil Nadu. Then there is Kadu Kurubu tribe, which belongs to Karnataka. There is Bharya Bhumya tribe, which belongs to Chhattisgarh, and Hate community, it belongs to Himachal Pradesh. So you should be knowing about this detail because it can come in the form of match the following. And talking about India China's trade deficit, so it stands at $51 billion, and we look at the previous year's figure, it was at $73 billion. So it has come down, but you should also be knowing that the merchandise exports from India to China, they had also increased. And there is one more trend that you should be knowing, that we keep talking about, that we should reduce our dependence and reduce our imports from China. However, our dependence on imports from China, they are increasing. So this becomes important, and it can definitely come up in prelims in the form of a sentence. Then talking about how are we going to promote sports in our country. So center is going to promote the traditional Indian games internationally, and the games includes Malkham, Thangta, Yogasan, Gatka, and Kalpitta. So you can find out more about these sports. And they'll be also identifying the sporting talent from rural areas and opening up 1,000 Khelo India centers. So this is a step in the direction to promote more sports in our country. So International Labour Organization declaration, it urges the countries to ensure labor protection. So it has come out with a 10-point priorities of national action for the member countries to deal with three issues as far as labors are concerned. So the first one is the dwindling wages, second is inflation, and third is unemployment. So these are major concerns when we talk about the challenges faced by labors. So also it is calling upon for focusing upon more on closing the gender gaps in the world of work through measures that increase women's labor force participation. So when we are saying women's labor force participation, you should be knowing about the latest figures as of the which are provided by the periodic labor force survey. And next, it is saying that we need to promote equal pay for work of equal value, balance work and responsibilities, and promoting women's leadership. Also, strengthen governance frameworks and respect for freedom of association to protect rights of migrant workers. So you should be knowing about all these points. Then India not as decoupled and still on a sticky path. So this article is talking about the viewpoints. What is the view of our economists? So it is saying that China, firstly, it is saying that China, it remains absent as a shock observer for the global economy, given that we are reviving out of the pandemic, and also the global growth is also slowing down. There are global challenges, geopolitical challenges. So China, it remains absent. And secondly, it says that the private capital expenditure is also missing due to the global uncertainty and volatility. So these are the two major observations which I can say. And India is decoupled in the short term from the global economic recession because our economy is, we can say, comparatively more resilient when we compare it with other countries. And still, we are on a relatively sticky path as far as inflationary trends are concerned. And obviously, we are still on the upper limit of the inflation target, that is 6%. But when we talk about our economies globally, obviously we are living in a globalized world, so our economy is globally synchronized, and therefore we cannot be fully insulated from the global impacts. So there is definitely going to be certain impact, but we can say not a huge one which is going to shake our economy. Also, there are some states which are seeing a consumption slowdown due to the lower purchasing power, and this is because of the inflation, the higher inflation, which leads to lower purchasing power. So we need to work more upon planning our debts better. So that is one thing. And our chief economic advisor is also saying that the public capital expenditure pace, it can slow. So obviously it's not important to maintain that pace or increase that pace over a period of time, because if as and when the private firms they start to borrow and expand their activities, the government may need not keep its own borrowings in check. The government may need to keep its own borrowings in check to avoid an increase in the overall cost of capital in the economy. So that is what he has to say. And talking of the entrepreneurship, so half of rural youth they aspire to become entrepreneurs. So that is we can say a good indication, because this is going to promote self employment instead of being dependent on the private sector, or to be precise, on the government jobs, or on even in the private sector in the IT firms on getting jobs. So here they'll be generating jobs and be self-employed. So we see that most of them, out of, we can say, 9 out of 10 rural businesses surveyed, they were found to be first generation enterprises. So that is, we can say, a positive indication. Let's move on to the Financial Express now. So in Financial Express, we have a couple of good articles today. So as we all know that we are promoting millets and we are celebrating 2023 as the International Year of Millets. So we see firstly that area under the oilseeds, it has risen to a record 9.5 million hectare, and also the wheat sowing stood 25% higher than the year ago level. So these are two developments which we can see, and obviously an increase in the area under the oil seeds is going to boost the domestic edible oil production, and it is obviously and definitely going to help reduce our imports, which are majorly coming from Indonesia and Malaysia. And talking about the overall area under all the rabi or the winter crops, that includes wheat, pulses, oil seeds, and coarse cereals, they have also increased by 15% from the year ago level. So these trends, they can come in prelims. So that's why they become important. And talking about the savings rate, it stands at 19-year low in the first half of the current financial year. So when we look at this trend given in this bar diagram, the first thing that we can make out is that the savings rate, it has not fallen at a steady rate. So sometimes in prelims we get such questions that whether it has fallen at a steady or a continuous rate or not. So that is not the case, and it stood at 36.9% in 2010-11, and it has now come down to 28.5%. And how do we calculate savings rate? So basically, we subtract the total final consumption expenditure out of our gross domestic product. So in simpler terms, I would say when we subtract our consumption from our total income, we get the savings rate. And also, lower savings, they will make it difficult to increase our investment rate, because it is ultimately the savings that are invested leads to capital formation. And households, they have been increasing their consumption expenditure, even though increase in per capita income, it has not kept pace. So that is also one of the development. Also, because of increase in inflation, we are seeing that a savings rate has fallen, which is obviously led to reduction in the purchasing power. Then, okay, so NK Singh, that is chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, he says that there is a need of center state bodies in the farm sector. So the government should look at mechanisms which are on similar lines as the GST Council for the agricultural sector also, and the social sector and the digital economy, to foster consensus in the national policy making with the states. So basically, so as to strengthen our cooperative federalism. And talking about few facts and figures as far as the agriculture sector is concerned, so about 45% of our population is still dependent on agriculture, even though agriculture contributes only 14% of our GDP. So this can be, it can come up in prelims as that almost we like 50% or more than 50% of the population is dependent upon agriculture. So that would be wrong. It is less than 50%, that is 45%, and it is only contributing 14% to the GDP. So we can say there is disguised unemployment, and obviously we need to improve more upon our productivity and efficiency as far as agriculture is concerned. And 80% of India's exports, they come from only 6 states. So here we are talking about exports. So only 6 states, they have 80% contributions in our export income, with 22 states having negligible contributions to the overall exports. So we need to bring the states which are non-participants into the picture, and that is what they have more potential. So we can harvest this a benefit from the non-participant states, and we need to focus upon the northeastern region also, which has significant potential when we talk about the exports, and it can prove to be a huge export multiplier for us. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining Ansarkari. I hope you enjoyed and understood new things today, and you'll be getting the PDF link in the description box. So do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. And thank you so much.